Okay, so here's the idea. What we were talking about the other day is we were talking about mortgages and talking about, down payments. I still want to talk about that, but I want to go one step further and do some real math with you. Something that banks would do for you. They do some calculations, and you wouldn't see these numbers unless you kind of experienced them in a math class, or if you worked for the bank and you have to know that because you'd have to go through training for this. But it's one of those things, like, it's nice to see the numbers so you get a little scared, because these numbers apply to mortgages, number one. So we're in the third section, I think, of chapter 2 here, or chapter 4. So section 4.3, we're talking about mortgages. But it's a little bit more than just that. What we're actually discussing is we're going to discuss a mortgage, obviously, which is a home loan, right? That's a house loan, home loan. They just have a fancy term for it. But we're also talking about, and this is the part that you don't really know, is that student loans, if you go to college, a university, and you're going to take out, a student loan to get there, student loans have the same formula, and credit cards do as well. Credit cards. And so, now why I bring that up is that I have a credit card, I have one, and the only reason why I got it was that my credit score, which is fine, I have a really good credit score, my credit score was lower than my wife's, and I'm super competitive. So I got a credit card so I could beat her credit score. Like, legitimately, that's the only reason why I got it. And because, I never had a credit card before. I didn't have one up until I was 31 or 32. Right? I'm 37, so I've had it for a few years. But the idea is, I didn't have one before that. I never thought I'd need one. Credit card is different than a debit card, right? Where debit card, you have to have cash in the bank, right? If you're going to Target, you're going to purchase something, and you swipe your card, and you don't have any money in that bank account, the debit card literally cancels out on you. It says insufficient funds, and it'll say declined or something. Unless you use it as a credit card, because some cards allow you to do that. Well, what a credit is that they give you a limit of money that you are allowed to spend, even though you don't have any cash maybe in the bank to prove it. They allow you to spend a certain amount, allotted amount, based on how much money you make per year. And then you can go spend that, or I would not tell you to spend all of it, just, maybe you need to make an extra purchase that you didn't have cash for, and then you want to pay it off at a later time. So maybe here's the best thing for a credit card. You're going to buy maybe some gas, and then later this week when you get paid, maybe you get paid on Friday this week, you're going to pay off the credit card. You're going to pay the gas bill. Does that make sense? That way, that's the best way to use a credit card. Small purchases, and you pay it off instantly when you get paid. Don't wait a month. Because credit cards have these hidden fees. They're not really hidden, they kind of tell you in all the really small text, that if you have a outstanding balance, you still have money that you've spent on the card and you didn't pay it off, by the end of the month, they charge you a fee on what you purchased. So it's most credit cards are 2% on what your purchase is. One purchase, 2%. So if you bought a very expensive item, because maybe you had to get a new washer dryer, 2% on a very expensive item is a lot of money. So just think about that. It's one of those things you don't really think about, but it does catch up with you. So I got a credit card because I wanted one, right? My credit score was fine. Credit scores, if you don't know what a credit score is, it's this mythical number that banks associate with you. It's the major lending companies. There's 3 major lending companies that check credit. They have different purposes. One's for credit, home loans and student loans. One's for small loans, and one's for just paying bills. They have individual scores. And the scores typically go from, I think the lowest score I've ever seen was a 400 up to 850. This is what credit scores go, okay? Basically what this is when you guys are at the age you are now, you're in the middle. You're kind of between 500 and 600. Because you haven't proved to the banks that you're a liability yet, right? You're not at risk. So they don't really know what your score is. So you're just kind of floating in the middle. And then what happens is if you get a credit card or you take out a small loan, this credit score will go down because you've borrowed money, right? It's a risk. Because now why the score goes down, it's not a bad thing, don't get me wrong. It went down because now you have less money to spend on other things. Does that make sense why it went down? Because they want to balance you out a little bit. They don't want to have your score go up, because then you could take out more money. The higher score is, the more money you can take out. So when you borrow money, the score goes down a little bit. because you have to pay it back. Once you paid it back, what they do is you go back to the middle, and then since you were a very loyal customer and you paid it back, they bump your score up. So now you can borrow a little more money. And so your score would go down, you pay it back, boom, your score goes back to where it was, and it goes up a little bit. And they're trying to figure out that mythical number, right, where you're a really good customer, and you want to get up to as high a score as you can so you can borrow as much money as you want. Right, that's the idea. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, well, fine. I don't really have a lot of loans. I have a car loan, I have my mortgage. That's pretty much about it. I have a credit card now, so my score was always really good. It was like 700s because I didn't really have anything. I got a credit score, so I got a credit card. So my score went down initially, but it went up when I paid it back. They're like, oh, he's a good customer, he pays it back. So now my score was like 800s. So that meant, the terrifying part was that meant when I went into a car dealership to go look at a car, I was approved for any car on the lot. Any car. That could be a Ford Raptor down to, a little Chevy Equinox, right? I could get any car I wanted. I couldn't afford it, but I could get any car on the lot because of my credit score. But it was one of those things like this mythical number helps you because if your number is really low, the banks will give you extra money. Like you're tapped out. Because some people, they go low because they can't pay their bills. They'll be like, well, I can't pay the car this month because I have to repair it. Like I have to fix the car, so I'm not going to pay off I'm not going to pay off the loan. I'm going to use that money to pay the car to fix it, and then next month I'll try to pay it back. Well, that means your credit score is getting dinged. You're not a loyal customer anymore. Like, you don't have as much money as you thought you did, and your score is going down. So, and you can repair it over time, just take out some loans. Now, the only reason I had a good credit score going into the dealerships right away is because when I was a freshman, I took out my first loan, freshman in high school. Took out my first loan, I bought a computer. My parents told me to do it to build credit scores up. So I took out a small loan, bought a computer, paid it back over a year. It was a really cheap computer. I paid it back, my credit score went up, right? Then I bought my first truck my freshman year of high school. My credit score went down. I paid it back over the 4 years in high school. Senior year I had it paid off. My credit score went up. So I had really good credit going into college. And the reason why I did that is because I needed to get student loans. I had to get student loans. My parents were not going to pay my student loans for me. They already told me that. So if I was going to college with the understanding that I had to pay it all back, whatever I borrow. And this is where the terrifying part comes in. The student loan calculation we're about to do, and the home loan, the mortgage calculation we're going to do for mortgage. It's terrifying how much money you spend. Terrifying. Because you're spending a lot more money than you think you are. So here's the idea. Okay? Let me give you this concept. I'm going to do it for a mortgage for a house. Let's say you went out and you bought an $80,000 home here in Garner. $80,000 home here in Garner is a very nice home. Like in Garner, those are really nice homes. You can get a lot of home for 80 grand. Clear Lake, that would be the smallest home on the market, right? There's just a difference in where, location is. Are you next to a lake? Or is there lots of different things? But a really nice home here in Garner you can get for 80,000, even less. But let's say you're going to take out that loan. Okay, you're going to do a down payment. Fine. Let's say you did a down payment of 15%. Down payment. So this is what your homework was yesterday. Right? Do we agree this is what you had to do in your homework yesterday? That was the page 87 stuff. Okay. So what we talked about yesterday was you take that number, the 80 grand, you take it times your 15%, which is 0.15, right? Because you have to make it a decimal. You move the decimal over 2 spots. So 0.15 times 80,000. This is the down payment you're making, right off the bat. So 80 grand times 0.15. You're paying $12,000 up front. Maybe you saved some money. Maybe your parents gave you a little bit of a loan. You did a down payment on your home. You paid $12,000 right off the bat. So that means the home you're actually buying doesn't cost $80,000. It is now $80,000 minus the $12,000. Okay. So now you're at what? $68,000 for the loan that you're going to borrow. Okay, you still following with me? Okay, that's a normal thing, right? You do down payment. Now, obviously 15% is kind of big, but you get the idea. All right, let's get to the real math now. This is the formula that they don't tell you in a bank, This is something you just have to learn on your own or in a math class, like this class. This is what they call the compound interest loan formula. I'm gonna put that on the board. Compound interest formula. Compound interest formula. Okay, what that is, what compound interest formula is, it is this mythical formula that tells you how much money you're going to pay per month for your home. It is terrifying when you see it. It puts into consideration how many years you want to take out your loan for, because obviously when you take a loan for a house, you can't pay it back in 1 year. It's a very expensive home. So you pay it back over a lot of years. Now, with a compound interest loan, this is only loans for those 3 things I listed earlier. What were the 3 things that I listed earlier for loans? Or my 3 major bullets I talked about earlier. What's one of them? What are the 3 things I can borrow money for?
Mortgage.
Mortgage? Okay. Seriously. Mortgage. Next one. What was the other things you could take loans out for? That you might have to deal with here in about a year?
Student loans.
Student loans. And the last one?
Car loan.
What?
Car loan.
Not a car loan. No, that would be a different type of loan. Here's the last thing. I said I got it because I had to compete with my wife. Credit card. Yeah, credit cards. This is the mythical formula that's in the background. So it works for these 3 items. This is the same formula for all 3 of them. It is absolutely ballistically insane what it does. It's only for these 3 because these 3, you take out loans for long periods of time. That's what they're agreement for. Credit cards, if you ever look at a credit card, if you're a loyal customer, your credit card will expire many years down the road. It doesn't expire after 1 or 2 years. It expires after 5 to 10 years. So they consider that a long-term loan. Car loans only go up to 5 or 6 years. They don't really go past that. If you're here in Iowa, if you go to California, you can get loans out for 12 years or 10 years or something like that on cars because you can get really expensive cars really cheap by doing it that way. But that's bad in case it depreciates a lot. That's how people in California can afford really expensive cars to get a loan for 10 to 12 years for it. But here's the idea. Here's the formula. I like you writing down the formula here. It is green. Okay. A equals P1 plus R divided by N all to the NT. This is the formula. They don't tell you what it is. They don't even show you this when you walk into a bank. This is the formula they're calculating how much money you're going to pay the bank for your home loan. All right, are you guys ready for this one? All right, so here's the idea. The principal is your P. Principal is the amount of money you're borrowing. It is the mortgage that you're borrowing. So, how much money are we borrowing for my home? We're borrowing $68,000 for my home. Okay, that's my P. That's the number of P. R is the interest rate on this formula. So I'm using that R. R is the interest. Interest rate. Now, what an interest rate is, it is the extra fee they charge you, right? On credit cards, it could be 2% per month. On home loans, it could be whatever your credit score is. It depends on your credit score. So that's the terrifying part. If you have bad credit, you have a really bad interest rate, so they charge you more money, which is totally backwards. The banking system, I believe, in our country is totally broken. If you have bad interest, the score, I understand why they do it, that means that you can't afford things, right? And then the bank just charges you more money for the same object that somebody else was paying for as well. They're charging you more money for something you already couldn't afford for somebody that doesn't have money in the first place. So wrap your head around that. It's totally broken. The system's broken. Because now the reason why they do it is because you're not trustworthy. They are charging you extra money to force you into that thing like, hey, You have to pay it because we're charging you extra money. They're trying to encourage you to pay it off earlier, which I don't understand why they're doing that. All right, but this interest rate. Let's say your interest rate on your home, I'll just give you an example. The interest rate on the home that we bought was 3.9%. That was my interest rate, because at the time, me and my wife have extremely good credit, right? It goes up and down depending on the loans that we have. So obviously I bought a new car, so my interest rate or my credit score is a little bit lower now until I pay it off, then it goes back up again. But our interest rate at the time, I believe we had no loans. We had no loans, we had no car loans, nothing like that. I didn't even have a credit card at the time when I bought my home. So our credit scores were phenomenal. We got a really good interest rate. Thing about my parents back in the early 80s, 70s when they bought their home, or they built their home, I should say, their interest rate to get a loan for the mortgage to pay for their home was 12% in the 70s. That was normal. That was a normal interest rate. Now we're at 3%. The rates come and go with the president. The president will set the interest rates, depending on, to encourage the economy to grow. So when interest rates go lower, they want to encourage people to buy more homes. Like right now, I believe you guys have really good interest rates to buy homes. They're trying to encourage you to go do that instead of renting, because it helps the market. You're flooding the market with more money. It's a good thing to have low interest rates. Not too low, but a medium number. I've definitely seen interest rates on cars as high. I was offered an interest rate at one point for a car that was 9 to 10%. I was like, I'm not gonna buy a car for that 9 to 10% interest. That's dumb. Especially when I bought a car earlier for like 3% interest. Like, to me, 3 is like a magical number. It's like I want to be around there. I want to be lower than that, preferably. But this is a pretty good number. I thought that was pretty good on a house. Now, the loan. So the end. Let's go to the end. This is how many times they charge you a fee. It is a compound charge. What I mean by that, compound charge, is how many times they charge you a fee. What that fee is, and this works on credit cards, works on student loans. If you don't pay the whole loan off, the entire loan in its entirety, they charge you a fee every month. Wrap your head around that. So that means if you have a student loan, right? I went to Iowa State for 4.5 years. My student loans leaving Iowa State were about $64,000 at the time when I left Iowa State. That was me like 15 years ago, something like that. It was $64,000. Since I didn't pay it off after the first month of my student loan, because after you graduate or you stop going to school, you stop enrolling in the school, 6 months down the road you get your first bill. After that first month bill, right, it's a shock when you see the number because you're about to see it here in a second. If you don't pay it off in the first month, right, you don't pay it off in entirety, they charge you a fee for not paying. And the fee that they charge you is based on what's left. So it's insane. That's how they get money. The system's broken. So, compound charge. They charge you 12 times a year. Why is it 12 times a year? Why would it be 12 times?
Because every month.
Every month. It's terrifying. Every month they charge you a fee for not paying it off. I can't pay off an $80,000 home. Who has that type of money? But yeah, they'll charge you a fee because I didn't pay it off. Okay, so I didn't pay it off, so they're going to charge me a fee. So I'll put all these numbers in. Now the time, the T on this formula, as you can see up there, it's T. That is time. And this is how many years you're going to take out that loan for. So on a mortgage or a student loan, you could go up to 30 years. Up to 30 in this area. In other states you can go more than that. I think I've even given you the idea for me is like I took out a 30-year mortgage. So and I think I was 32 at the time when I bought my home, somewhere in there, or maybe it was 29. I was somewhere in that range when I bought my home for the first time. And so I'll be 30 years older. So I'll be, if I got my loan at 32, I'll be 62 by the time I pay off my home. So you have to think about in terms of real world. I'll be 62, right? I'll be just probably retiring at that point, right? So this is the number of years. And here's the thing, they charge you a fee every month for that many years. So you're paying a crazy amount back for a home that only cost you $68,000 to begin with. If I had the cash, the house would cost me 68 grand. But since I didn't have that type of cash, because no one should have that type of cash, it's ridiculous, they charged me fees. So here's what this formula will do. It will spit out how much money you're going to pay for that home in its entirety. Now you're thinking, okay, it can't be that much. It is. So here's the number, and this is the number that will be over 30 years that you're going to pay back. 68,000, that's the loan I'm borrowing. So if you have a calculator, that's something you're going to need to type. 68,000, put a parenthesis behind it. Now inside the parenthesis, you have 1 plus. Because if you notice my formula, 1 plus. Okay. Now what is my interest rate? What was my rate on mine? 3.9. So what you're going to do is in parentheses, type in 0.039 divided by 12 times a year and close that parenthesis. 0.039 divided by 12, close the parenthesis, because that's taking care of this, right? That's my rate divided by how many times they charge me. And then now you're going to hit the little caret key. So you have your little caret key. I believe the caret key is over by the 7, correct? It's this little arrow key. And now you're going to put a parenthesis again. Put a parenthesis. And in this parenthesis, what's the n number? How many times they charge me? 12 times a year times the number of years I'm borrowing my loan for. So I'm going to go 12 times 30. I'm going to go with a 30-year loan. That's pretty normal around here to get a 30-year loan for a house. Okay, does everyone make sense of that? Hit enter. Now you can be scared. How much money am I paying for a $68,000 home in Garner over 30 years? And this is a real number. Tell me.
208,
So again, 280,
18,680.
680,
Yeah.
point, and
24.
24. And there's probably a bunch of other numbers. That is not a made-up number. You are actually looking at my mortgage I just took when I was 32. That was my numbers. Okay, it was an $80,000 home that I bought. Okay? I put a $12,000 deposit on it, because I got a loan for that at the time. And so that is what I'm paying back over 30 years for my $68,000 home. You're like, Ward, that's dumb. Yeah, it's dumb. The system's broken. It was a $68,000 home, and the bank charged me $218,000 over 30 years for it. Now, here's the worst part. That's also the student loan that I have. Wrap your head around that. Because my student loan through Iowa State was about $64,000, about the same number, right? My student loans are for 20 years, not 30, but the interest rate at the time when I graduated was lower than 3%. Your interest rate now is 9% when you guys graduate. So it'll be more money than that. And you're paying more money than I did. Because my number per year was about 12 to 13 grand plus all my books and all the other stuff that I bought. So I think I had about $64,000 worth of student loans at the time, 4.5 years. That's what I'm paying back in student loans. This is where presidential candidates make a big difference to me. Presidential candidates lower my interest rates. They make my home more affordable because when the interest is changed, my loan changes. That's kind of nice. It also makes a big difference on my student loans and your student loans. That's why it's a big deal. It's like, oh, I don't really care who's president. You should, because your president set an interest rate at 9% for student loans. 9%. I graduated to Iowa State 15 years ago with 1.7% interest. This is where I believe that a president and banking, should not make education profitable. No one should be profiting off of my student loan. That's a pure profit for a bank. Why? It makes no sense to me. That's why a presidential candidate makes a lot of sense to me. That's why when you hear Bernie Sanders and you hear Elizabeth Warren and you hear, by the way, I'm Republican, so you can keep that in mind. I will tell you that right off the bat. It's just that I agree with at least those Democrats that education should not be a profitable business. That a bank should not be profiting off of me taking a loan to go to higher education. like. That's where some of those Democrats believe that you should have a 0% interest. 0% interest. So what would I pay back over 30 years if it was 0% interest? 68,000. That's what education should be. That's what I personally believe. No one should be benefiting off of me. I understand I have to pay for my education. I understand that. I have to pay for the university, but no bank should be making this amount of money off of me to go to higher education when I make $40,000 to $50,000 a year in my job. That makes no sense. Wrap your head around this, okay? We have doctors in Mason City, doctors that work at Mercy, that are legitimate doctors, right? Went to the University of Iowa for their medical program. You got an MD, got a doctorate. They're on food stamps. They have food stamps because they can't pay their student loans with what they get paid at Mercy. That's why doctors quit Mercy so fast. They're on food stamps because they can't afford to pay their $1 million student loans at a hospital. And they're a doctor, for the love of God. Like, it makes no sense, and you're seeing it. I'm paying $218,000 for a home. If you divide that by 30 years, this is what I'm paying. 218, 680.24. Divide that by 30, divide that by 12 months. I'm paying $607 for my mortgage every month. That is literally what I'm paying right now for my mortgage. For my house, $607. Because you just take that number and you divide by how many months, how many years. And so that's the number I'm paying back to the bank. Right? $600 loans. The thing is, I took out a loan for $68,000, right? If I just took $68,000, divided by 30 years, divided by 12 months, my mortgage should be $118 or $188. But they're trying to profit off of me by taking a loan out. The system's broken. So I just don't understand this. Like, I understand that banks need to make money too. I mean, a bank is a money-making venture. But why are you doing this? I saw all you guys when you looked at the WM. What? That's a real number. That's my number. Okay? So it's one of those things like, I'm not trying to scare you away from taking out a home loan. I'm trying to get you to wake up a little bit to see, like, it kind of makes a difference when you start looking at real term numbers. So, all right, does that make sense? I'll at least show you some real numbers. I'm not trying to terrify you and scare you out of going to college because, you know, that's part of the same formula. But yeah, so something you gotta think about. So we'll do credit cards and we'll do some student loans next time. I'll actually put my student loans on the board.